What's up, everyone? Kevin here from Skywatcher. Welcome to another episode of the What's Up Webcast. We do this every Friday, 10 a.m. Pacific, right here at the Skywatcher USA YouTube channel. We cover everything from what's up in the nighttime sky to equipment to helpful tips and tricks. And of course, at the end of the month, we have a special guest to talk about their specialty in the field of astronomy. Before we get started, I bring Rick in here. Just a couple little announcements like we do every week. If you like what you see here, please go ahead and subscribe. Leave a like on the channel. Let us know we're doing a good job. You know, the YouTube-y stuff. If you want to support the channel more, you can head over to skywatcher.threadless.com and you can pick up all kinds of fun, cool swag over there. Just head over there and take a look at it. If you want to support us more, go to our website and buy something. Hooray. All kinds of stuff up there. And then I don't want to take up too much of Rick's time, so we're going to fastball this real quick. And then last but not least, today is the last day to pre-order the Focus Astronomy State 48 collaboration shirt. This celebrates the night skies, particularly here in Arizona, but you can wear it anywhere you want. It is printed locally here in Arizona. You can head over to focus.astro.org, go to shop, and you can pick up one of these shirts, and we will be putting the order in next week, so the wait won't be too long. But if you want to pick one up, appreciate it. Head over there, check it out. So, okay. So, without further ado, I'm going to switch this over here. Going full screen, and here comes Rick. Hey, Rick, how you doing?
Doing good. How you doing, Kevin?
Pretty good. If none of you have ever met Rick Hedrick before, shame on you. But if you ever go to NEAF and the big shows, Rick is normally there. Before I ask my usual question, some people might not understand what observable space is. They might be more familiar with you and PlaneWave. I didn't know if you could kind of segue, you know, how PlaneWave was a thing. Let me change my name here really quick because I am not Jeff. Boom. What is observable space? People know you from PlaneWave, and then after that, how'd you get started in astronomy? And because you've gone through the history of, you worked for Celestron, and there's some popular stuff that you and your team created that people might not even know you were a part of, and then PlaneWave kind of was birthed from that at that point as
Sure.
well. So
Yeah. Hi everybody. PlaneWave we started in 2006, and you know we're very, to be in this industry, to make telescopes and everything, you kind of have to be vertically integrated. So we do our own software, we do our own optics, we machine our own parts, we at this point build our own motors, we make our own optics machines, we write our own software, and all these things. You're building up kind of a full stack of products to try and make the products easier to use and better experience and work better, have control over everything, and try and keep the prices reasonable. We met at a small conference group called R-Sky that had just started, and they were a VC-backed tech startup, LA-based tech startup. And I met at the conference. They were talking about astrophotography and space observation, and they were building a platform, a software platform, modern software platform that can control multiple telescopes, could auto process stuff, all these things that were missing, because the hobby is a hard hobby, as you guys, everyone out there knows. Taking it, you got like pick your camera, you got to figure out how to put it on the telescope, you got to figure out the right position to put it, you've got to find the software, the drivers for the telescope, drivers for the camera, something to orchestrate all those things together, then your image processing, it's just this big thing. And it's always been in my mind that how difficult this was. And when I met R-Sky, I'm like, oh my God, I really like what they're trying to do. And so we started working together. And then we started working together on deploying a network of telescopes for observing satellites. So we had put stuff together. We even have a demonstration observatory where we put telescopes there. They built the observatory in Virginia, so we could both co-market it. So we started working together right away, and we're very aligned. And it just became more and more obvious that there's so many advantages if we come together as one company. It's really the merging of software and hardware together, which is really, the modern,
Yeah.
the Tesla, the iPhones, it is really to try and increase improve the experience of everyone, make things easier and more powerful, and optimize hardware and software together. So we joined together we announced in February, I think, February of this year, that we merged RSky and PlaneWave, and we formed a new company, Observable Space. Now, so everyone will see Observable Space and PlaneWave mixed around. Obviously, PlaneWave has, we have lots of customers and we have a long history. So, our PlaneWave website's the same. We're still selling products under PlaneWave. But as we start integrating products, those will start coming out as Observable Space. So we've got some big stuff that's more for commercial right now that's coming out that way. But stuff will be coming for the consumer market also. It's just as we work through this stuff. And the nice thing about Observable Space is everything we work on, which right now is focused on commercial market and defense and things like that, because that market's just like blowing up right now. There's a lot going on, but everything we're working on will apply itself to the enthusiast market too. Like it's all these tools we're building are going to work across all the different markets we have. So it's going to be great. Great things are going to be coming, and so much of it is going to be backwards compatible to people that already have telescopes too. So, a lot of good things coming we're very excited about. But that's kind of the quick story about Observable Space.
Awesome. And if you guys want to know more, you can always call them up. They're the same great team that you know. It's just another name, but they're adding a lot of cool stuff to it. So anyway, that's the quick pitch of it. But Rick, you've been doing astronomy for a long time. I've seen pictures of you building Dobbs. I've seen pictures of you doing classes, and then you've worked with Celestron and then PlaneWave. So I didn't know if you could kind of take us through. This might be you might have to sit down for a bit, but take us through how you got started to how you're head of PlaneWave.
Yeah, well, I was in college. I went in Torrance, California, went to El Camino College, and it's a community college. And I went there and I was studying physics, and I met a professor. I kind of like to name all the important people because the path that leads us to where we go, there's influential people and key people that made it happen. I met a professor there, Perry Hacking, who is a professional astronomer at JPL, and also full-time astronomy professor and physics professor at El Camino College. And he gave a talk at the science club, and he was talking about the project he's working on at JPL, which was a space telescope, infrared space telescope. And he had proposed for NASA, they call it a Small Explorer program. He had proposed a project, had an idea for this telescope. And so I heard him talk, and I go, hey, that guy sounds pretty cool. I should do an independent study under him. I'd already taken the astronomy classes. He was a new professor at school, and I was already taking physics. I'd already passed the classes he taught. So I went and talked to him, and I said, hey, I'd like to do an independent study. And he said, well, you could do something on globular clusters. You could do something on proto-galaxies. So you could do astrophotography. And I went, let's try that. And so El Camino College had an observing deck on top of the math building. They had a bunch of telescopes that the the lab class would take out and use, and they had a 16-inch Celestron Schmidt-Cassegrain permanently mounted, and they had a big dark room which hadn't been used for years. So I learned to resurrect. I resurrected the dark room, got into astrophotography. First was I was doing that with the 16-inch doing planetary, and then they had a 10-inch that Newtonian someone had built on a homemade fork mount, and this is back in the days of clock drives. And I ended up taking that mount out and taking that telescope out and doing astrophotography with film. And so really learned astrophotography the hard way, where you're using clock drives, You're having to learn how to focus your film with like the knife edge and putting the film in after the fact, and all this, and then imaging for 45 minutes or an hour at a eyepiece, with a drive corrector. And so all the hard stuff, and got really, but just like fell in love with telescopes. So I was studying physics and math and chemistry and all of this, but I saw all these applications to apply what I was learning to telescopes. And so I just couldn't help myself. I just started learning everything I could. And then I got a part-time job at Celestron doing tech support. And I remember they had a book of useful telescope formulas, and I'm doing tech support. And I thought, and I was into it. So I'm going like, I want to be able to answer any question someone asks, and I went and I looked at their book with all the formulas, and I derived all the formulas from basic principles. It was just like going down the rabbit hole, super interested in everything. So I was there part-time, but I'd go to like OPT day, and do the star parties, and and even Celestron even offered the VP of sales at that point, because I remember going to one OPT day, and they had this great OPT day, and Craig came out and said, if you can collimate this telescope, it'll be sold. It was a Schmidt cash gun. Yeah, sure, collimate it up. There you go, you're ready. And he went back and said, yeah, Rick is freaking great. You should hire him full time, And so they offered me a job to go into sales at Celestron and quit school. And I'm like, no, I think I'm going to go the school route. But I love Celestron. And so while I was at El Camino, I continued on, and with this professor and doing astrophotography, I said, hey, why don't we try and make a telescope, start a telescope making class? And he's like, well, it's pretty tough. Telescopes are hard to make, he says, but if you can get some people to sign up, I'll see if the school will give us a room to work in. And so me and this other gal, Elizabeth Mignat, we went out and we got a bunch of people to sign up for the class, and we started a telescope making class at El Camino. And that class, up until COVID, had been going from 1991 until COVID was being taught there. There's telescope making class every semester. So that's how I kind of got into telescope making. Then I transferred to UCLA and, continued on my degree in physics there. But on weekends, we'd all come back. I'd come back to the telescope making class and make telescopes. So we're making big Dobbs. We even decided to make a really big 42-inch telescope, a really big Dobb. And we wanted one that didn't have too tall of a ladder. So we thought we'd make a really fast Newtonian with a kind of a wind corrector. And we were going to make all the lenses and everything by hand, in the class. And then another gentleman shows up to the class. He'd read about it in the paper. He was a telescope maker and a real technical guy, Dave Rowe. And Dave Rowe stopped by the class, was like, oh, this is really cool, and then saw the project we were working on, and kind of kept coming back each weekend with questions. Well, how far would you want the back focus? What field are you looking at? And then he came with a design saying, look, this is another design that we could use. And it gives you pinpoint stars across the field, and no coma, no off-axis coma, no off-axis astigmatism. It'd be a great visual telescope. And we looked at it and we adopted that design. And that was really the first CDK. It was a design he came up with kind of on the side. So then for years, we're working on this telescope, grinding by hand, grinding the secondary, doing the lenses, doing reducer lenses, all for this, all by hand. And talking about, what's the perfect telescope? By that time I graduated from college. I took a job at Celestron. And years are going by. This telescope took years. It took a couple of years just to get the mirror. It took years to make, and then we're all busy. Lives are happening, but we're still working on this big 42-inch telescope. And but now we're talking about Celestron. What things can we do? What new things can we be doing? And while I was at Celestron, we did the Next Star 5. So the Next Star, we did the Ultima 2000 while I was there. That was kind of a stalled project. And at that point, Celestron only had consultants as engineering. And I brought in, I started leading the team that was working with the consultants. And then, we started building an engineering department at Celestron. But we were able to finish this project that was stalled, the Ultima 2000, which was really a freaking cool telescope. This thing you could move by hand and it would slew. It had multiple encoders on it, and it could slew 10 degrees per second, a computerized telescope, which is later on the ones we made slewed 4 degrees per second like everyone else. So it was sort of a special telescope. But anyway, so then we the first telescope we did internally was completely by internal engineering was the Nexstar 5. That's first computerized telescope that we did. And then we did the Nexstar 8, and then we did the Nexstar GPS. Then we did the CPC.
Great telescopes.
That was
GPSs were awesome.
Yeah, that was a great telescope. And then we did the CPCs, and that was getting towards the end of the time that I was at Celestron. But continuing on, as we were making this big telescope, we're talking about what's the perfect telescope. It's like this optical design CDK we really believed in. And then we started talking about what are the mounts. And we determined like a direct drive mount would be the best mount too. So while I was still at Celestron, Celestron was purchased by Tasco. And then Tasco, kind of went under and was kind of pulling Celestron with it. And then Joe LaPica, Alan Hale, and myself bought Celestron from Tasco. And so we owned Celestron for, a handful of years. But it was very leveraged when we bought it. You couldn't get outside money in without them taking over the whole company. Investments were rough at that time. So we ended up selling the company to Cinta, basically, who was our supplier. And David Shen is a good guy. I've known him for many years. And right before that purchase, we had brought in the CDK design to Celestron to make a 20-inch telescope. And we had made a couple. We had designed it. We had made a mount for it.
Because that's where the CGE Pro project originated, I think, with your CGE Pro, which never came to life. It just was reused. And then there is the C20, which still exists.
Yes.
And that's the original PlaneWave.
That's right. And so the mount that we made was much bigger. And then when the CGE Pro was remade at Celestron, then there was a smaller version of it was made. But so we had like 3 of those mounts. I still have one here at PlaneWave, and we had one out in the desert at our observatory, and we put a 20-inch. But what was great, is after we sold Celestron, I stayed there for another year and a half, and then I really wanted to take the CDK design out and make a company out of it, because at that point CCD chips started getting bigger, and there was a real need for this telescope that we originally designed for visual was also an awesome design for for imaging. And so that's what so I was able to talk to David Shen and Joe LaPica, and they really helped PlaneWave start. They said, look, you can buy the inventory. I bought all the inventory. They gave me the drawings that we had done, so I didn't have to recreate drawings to start the company. And said, all I ask is that you mentioned that, we did it, that we let you have the drawings, and we did it very, amicably, that they were very helpful. And they were always, David Shen, every time I'd see him, he'd check out what we're doing, and he'd be like, oh, this is so great. This is great stuff you're doing. And so Celestron and PlaneWave have always been very close.
And I think it makes a lot of sense, because now seeing where PlaneWave has gone, and being part of Celestron at the time, and I'm part of Skywatcher, so I know what it's like to be on the mass production side. Eventually, as you've seen, like particularly with like the PlaneWaves, it's hard for the amount of technology and spec that goes into those things. It's especially the larger apertures. It's kind of hard for a mass production company to warrant these observatory class telescopes, because as you guys have shown, you need a whole different way of approaching installation and working with it and having a team to support it. And there's so much more involved on that. And it's not just like your 12.5, you could call it, buy it, put it on a mountain, hooray. But for someone like Celestron, be like, oh, we have a 20-inch. Well, how do I get it? How do I install it? There's just requirements that come with that. So,
but what's interesting is coming from Celestron. And back in the days when Celestron did all their manufacturing in-house, so I was right in there working with manufacturing. So I visualized these bigger telescopes, and these telescopes that used to be usually custom designed only. Someone orders a 0.7 meter or 24 or 1 meter is usually a custom project, right? So I took the idea of Celestron, of everything is a product line, which was different. That was never done before. And because of that, we're able to make the same scope over and over again, not custom. We didn't do custom. And that really brought the prices down. I mean, you sit there and look at a $600,000 1 meter telescope and you say, that's very expensive. But really before that, they were like $2 million, and they would take 3 years to get. And they would usually not work for a year. They'd have to, because telescopes are really hard. You design the first telescope, and that's hard. If you make someone over and over again, then they all work the same. So we're able to
talk about that here too.
Yeah.
It's easier to make a prototype because you have complete control over it. It's hard to execute that right every single time in production.
Yeah. So we've like even the 1 meter telescope, we install it in 1 day. It's a 1 day installation. So all the telescopes that we install, like 12.5s, 14s, 17s, a lot of times customers install those. But we also do those installs too when they want us to. So, but anyways, that's kind of a little bit of the story. It's a big story, a lot more.
Should write a book.
Well, we thought about it. I've got a PowerPoint that's a story. It's the beginnings of a book, and Dave Rowe and I have talked about trying to really capture this because it's so interesting. So many different people, and how people work together and how things happen.
Yeah. So I got a couple questions floating from people watching. Number one, can you elaborate on the CDK optical designs and compare and talk about the pros and cons about the design compared to other common Schmidt designs?
Yeah. So can I share screen? Does that work?
I should be able to.
I mean, I'll see what happens when I press share. Okay, you have to enable it. If not, I can use words.
Where's the... Oh, here we go. Okay, now you should be able to go. So.
Okay, you guys, are you seeing that?
Yep.
It's a picture. So, here's just a picture. This is a 52 millimeter corner to corner chip, right? And here's a star in the center, and here's a star in the corner, right? And you basically have pinpoint stars across the whole field. So there's no off-axis astigmatism. There's no off-axis coma. There's no defocus. It's a flat field. So the whole idea of this CDK was, it's offering this, and there weren't hardly any designs that really do this. And then I'll go up here, see if this, did that switch to the other image?
Yeah.
Okay. And so the CDK has a primary mirror, a secondary mirror, and then it has a lens group and then the focal plane. Okay. And the primary mirror is an A-sphere. In this case, happens to be an ellipsoid. And the secondary is a sphere. So that was a great also step forward. Like the telescopes in this class at the time were Ritchie-Chrétiens, and they had a hyperbolic primary mirror and a hyperbolic secondary. So you've got, like in the conics, you've got a sphere, you've got a ellipse, you've got a parabola, and you've got a hyperbola. So the hyperbola is deviating from a sphere a lot, and an ellipse is deviating from a sphere a little bit, right? So it's way easier to make an ellipse than a hyperbola. So the cost of a CDK is less because the mirrors are much easier to make. Mm-hmm. And the secondary is much easier to make because it's a sphere. Like nature wants to make a sphere. Everything you do wants to be a sphere. You have to fight it to turn it to deviate from a sphere. And a secondary hyperbola is really hard to make. Okay, so when you're making a Ritchie, the disadvantage is that all those components are hard to make, and then on top of that, you don't have the totally flat field, and you don't have pinpoints across the field. You have to add a lens corrector to then the CDK and the RC behave pretty much identically. If you put a field flattener, lens corrector, field corrector onto a Ritchie, then they perform exactly the same. But the Ritchie, since it has a hyperbolic secondary, an A-sphere secondary, alignment is super, super critical. You have to not only tip tilt align that secondary to the primary, to the optical axis of the primary, to the optical axis of the secondary, you have to do it sub-millimeter. In order to get the performance out of the telescope, that alignment's super hard. On a CDK, you have a sphere, which does not have an optical axis. You just have to tip tilt it correctly, and then you get the performance out of the telescope. Now you want it centered so vignetting and everything is even, but even if you were off centered, if you collimate it right, you get the performance.
So it's super forgiving.
Yeah, way easier to get the performance out of it. So that was, now you've got telescopes like the Edge that Celestron makes, and the Edge that Celestron makes is in a way like right when we were leaving Celestron, we'd thrown out some ideas saying, hey, look, you can make something like the CDK, but in a Schmidt-Cassegrain. It's the same sort of thing where you add a lens group right at the focal plane, and you can optimize either the corrector or you can optimize the primary and focal length to kind of mimic this, similar to what the CDK does. And that's kind of what the Edge is. So the Edge is a great, telescope. I'd say it's a cousin to the CDK.
You can definitely see where the genes drip down from like your team and PlaneWave to where Celestron kind of took some of that and brought it into it.
Right. Yeah. So I don't know. That's kind of a couple of the designs. Like hopefully that answers the question. I'd be happy to answer more, but
thought it just is they're easy to make. B, they really address all the major needs for astrophotography, flat field, pinpoint stars over a large field. So that's what the modern world wants.
So let me give one more thing about the way we assemble our telescopes, which most people don't do, is we take our primary mirrors and we glue them to a mirror cell and we spin it. So we spin it so there's no run out. We bounce a laser off it and we get the run out to be, sub-arc minute sort of alignment. And because of that, your optical axis of the primary is true to the mechanical axis of the mirror cell, which is then true to the back plate, which is then true to the whole optical tube. So then when we put the secondary together, all you have to do to collimate the telescope is tip tilt the secondary mirror. And when you do that, you don't have a tilted field at the back of the telescope. So when you mount to the back of the telescope, the optics are now aligned to the mechanical axis of the telescope. And most telescopes, other than like Celestron and Schmidt-Cassegrains, they're similar to what we do. They glue their mirror in place. But most of these telescopes that you buy that Ritchies and other Cassegrains, other CDK type telescopes, they have a collimatable primary, collimatable secondary, and if you don't collimate that primary true to the mechanical axis, you're going to have a tilted field. It's a very difficult thing because now it's multi-step, and people don't realize when they're collimating that, oh, my primary wasn't true to the mechanics, and then now my optics are all shifted to that, and it's difficult to do that.
Yeah, so. I had a friend's scope. It was a Dahl-Kirkham, and which is what these are. It just wasn't corrected, but it had the adjustable primary and secondary. I chased that thing down for weeks. And I had the lasers, I had the Cheshires, I had the Takahashis. It's like I had all the stuff to do it. It was still a freaking pain.
It's so tricky. It's so tricky, really. You got to control. You got to really have a method for doing it. So
yeah. Next question: is there a wedge for the CDK 1000? Feels like rotation will always be a problem in Altaz, no matter how good the scope is.
No, there's not a wedge, and I yeah, I respectfully disagree. I mean, the derotators like work really well. I mean, we've got lots of people doing really good astrophotography with 1 meters and 0.7 meters. And it's really what we're trying to do in that philosophy is make a telescope that's more affordable and that is high performing like the pros. So we're taking what Keck does, what GMT and all these big telescopes do is they have big direct drive motors. They're Altaz to minimize the mount and to minimize the space you take up, the envelope you take up. So Altaz is the future. I mean, we do lots of imaging Altaz with our L mounts too. The one disadvantage is since you're rotating relative to your spider vanes, you can get fans of the different colors of your RGB, as you're rotating relative to your diffraction pattern. So there's software fixes for that in your image processing.
I was curious about that actually. So.
Yeah. So that's the one place where if you're buying an L mount, those are meant to be mounted either equatorial or Altaz. And for astrophotography, I'd recommend Altaz, not because derotators don't do a really good job, but it just simplifies processing.
You said you mount it Altaz or equatorially?
Equatorial, I don't know what I said. I meant to say I would suggest we suggest to customers doing equatorial for astrophotographers with the smaller mounts.
Yeah, because if you guys ever look at pictures of remote observatories now, you could take a wild guess what the dominant mounts are right now. They're all the white L PlaneWave mounts. So
yeah. I've got a little picture here of. Let me just show. It's not the best, but I'll just here's the site in Chile. There's a lot more, but here's equatorially mounted L mounts. Those are L600s with 24s on them, and then a 1 meter there. Mm-hmm. So kind of fun. And I've got some other picture. Oh, maybe here. Let's see. Yeah, you can't quite see them all, but yeah, there's lots of. It's nice to see, all these. Well, they're really high performing mounts. They're really fun to use. Once you start using them, you're like, oh, this is the way to go.
Yeah, there's no gears on them.
There's lots of great mount makers out there. There's so many great mount makers out there. But I mean, the direct drive is just so fun to use and really high performing. So, and the axis encoders just really change everything.
Because I've seen some of the guide logs on those things, and it's just flat. So.
Yeah, there's no periodic error. It's slow drift depending on how good your mount model is.
Yeah. What's the image circle on the CDK 1000 reducer?
I think it's.
All this is on the website too, guys.
I think it's 100 millimeters, and I think it's 70 millimeters with the reducer.
Because it's a big old hunkin' port on the side of that scope.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you guys want to know the actual tech specs, if you're thinking about getting one, all that's on the Observable Space and PlaneWave websites. All the reducers, a lot of the drawings are up there. Any technical stuff you want to know is for just off the shelf hardware is all on their website.
I mean, I will say that as we have grown, all the tech specs are not in my head as they used to be because now there's a whole team.
It's hard.
But I'm pretty sure it's 100 millimeter and it's something like 70 millimeter.
Yeah, with the big enough to handle the majority of what you're going to want to throw on it, and then room to grow as things change over the years.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on how PlaneWave arrived at the current direct drive mount design, benefits and drawbacks of the design versus geared designs? What pushed you to make your own motors?
Well, when we started talking about kind of our motto here, has been, the pursuit of the perfect telescope. So we're always making a telescope you wish existed, that we wish existed. Wish they could do this, wish they could do this. And you're one by one checking off the boxes of things we wish telescopes would do. One of them was just, really stiff tracking mount. You don't have backlash with gears. You don't have gears wearing out. If somebody the thing that always gets me is when we made geared mounts. We had the A200 with axis encoders, and it's a great mount. But when you see somebody grab the telescope and pull on it, knowing all the force that's on the little bearings that are holding that worm gear and your little setup, that because to make a worm geared mount work correctly, you got to like disconnect the motor and spin it by hand. It's got to feel like butter. It's got to be this, and that's now it's adjusted right, and so geared mounts are super finicky. All mounts, when you're trying to track really well, are super finicky to get the high performance out of them. And so that was also one of the great things. Like you can grab the mount, pull it, let go, it just goes right back to where it was. The only thing you pissed off was the servo loop and the magnetic fields interacting with each other.
I've seen you guys do that at shows. It's really wild to watch them grab these mounts when they're running. Like when you guys demo like the Delta Row 350s with the little demo setup, and when you guys just grab it, it's like, what are you doing? And then you let it go, it just snaps right back and like nothing happened. It's really kind of cool, and they're super quiet. So
yeah, really. So the disadvantages are, the what a direct drive mount is super sensitive to is tuning, right? Is if you have something that's loosey goosey, it actually can't really work because it'll excite things that are not tight. If you because you're directly coupled to the motor, and any vibration that you can excite, any eigen mode they'll call it, you can excite, it will cause a resonance. And so we have auto tuning, which makes that good. But if you say had a really loose secondary or something was loose, that becomes a real issue. Or I've seen people mount the mount up on really high screws, which now has play. And now you start vibrating that because you're like, the thing's trying to drive at a high frequency servo loop, and you start exciting things. You can put filters, like if you had something that's excited, one thing that you can't help, you can filter it out and not excite that. But anyways, they're more susceptible to stuff like that. Like a geared mount wouldn't have that problem.
Yeah,
You're not going to excite something. Wind might come along and excite it, but the mount itself is not going to excite it. But we've got auto tuning, which makes things very easy. With the direct drive mount, when you change equipment, right, you may have to retune if it's you have to rebalance it, and if it's a different load that's quite a bit different, you may have to retune. But with a geared mount, you also have to rebalance, and you're doing similar stuff. It's just so that's kind of the
what are the compromises and idiosyncrasies of every design? You got to figure out what that's at. So.
Yeah. Now I will say that one of the really big advantages too is an axis encoder. Axis encoders, like, they are really important. I mean, they change behavior of a mount completely. Periodic error is a thing of the past with an axis encoder. So and with mount modeling. So you axis encoder and building a mount model so you can see all the flexures of all your equipment across the whole sky is what really gives you the really high performance.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's pretty impressive with the high-end mounts with the modeling. If you guys haven't tried something like the PlaneWave or the BISC mounts or the APs, I know there's cheaper stuff out there, but when you build a mount model, the mount knows not just where it's at, but how everything performs in these weird angles and can correct for that. It's wild.
Yeah, because everything, when you start looking at fractions of an arc second, everything bends. When you start looking at nanometers scale on making optics, you realize everything's bending, everything's moving, and when you're looking at fractions of an arc second, everything's bending. Yet it bends in a very repeatable way. So if you take a lot of test points, you can model all that stuff out and keep your pointing to very high precision, and your tracking and everything. So
let's see. A few years prior to your endeavor with PlaneWave, Celestron was offering a large CDK. Approximately, if any, were produced while you were at Celestron.
Yeah, so we didn't ship one from Celestron. Did we ship one? We may have shipped one. We made one that we put at our observatory for testing out in Mojave Desert. And then we shipped one, I think it might have been to Embry-Riddle. And then there were orders that Celestron had. So when I started PlaneWave, we took those orders with us. I feel, oh no, you know what? It was Louisville, University of Louisville. They bought one from Celestron. Embry-Riddle was the first one that PlaneWave shipped. And later we sent, so the Celestron had the truss pole holders. They were Celestron orange, and PlaneWave, they're blue. There's little caps that hold the truss poles, and there were a little retaining ring piece or retaining bracket. And I think at one point later, when we went out to Louisville again, because they bought more telescopes, we changed them to blue for them, just so they matched everything. But so we only shipped one at Celestron.
They still have one. I think they still have one of the 20s in one of their storage rooms hidden back there. So.
It's a 18. It was the first prototype.
Okay.
And we keep talking about sending it to me, and we keep forgetting. It was in Europe for a while. We got it back from Europe, and it's Corey made sure it didn't get thrown away, and Eric there made sure it didn't get thrown away because
I've seen it. It's in there. It is not small. So anybody who's like, I need one, go get a PlaneWave if you want one. Next question: why not use curved spider vanes to get rid of the diffraction spikes?
With curved spider vanes, you can't tighten them very much, so you have a looser, structure when you're holding that.
Spring to it too.
Yeah, it has some spring to it. I mean, because really, you want these things pretty tight. And I would push back a little bit. Like most people, I see a lot of people add fake diffraction spikes to pictures because they're so appealing. Mm. So because it's so appealing and not that many people are complaining about it, we don't go to great lengths to get rid of them. And when you do have curved vanes, you're still, you won't get those diffraction spikes, but you're still affecting the diffraction. You're making your area disk a little bit bigger by doing that.
You're spreading it out rather than one nice.
Still spreading it. It's just not hidden in one line, but you're still doing the same amount of damage, if you will.
Is the optical performance of the CDK field flatness easy to collimate better than corrected Cassegrain designs of the Delta Rho series?
So so the Delta Rho is actually similar, right? It's still an elliptical primary and a spherical secondary. It needs more lenses because it's faster. So, in a way, it's a very similar design. But, astrographs are themselves not diffraction limited. Like none of these wide field, they give you really good stars across the field, but you're not diffraction limited. So I'm not sure I even did I answer the question.
I guess so. The way I see it, if you're comparing one of their CDKs to like the real fast Delta Rhos, they're very different animals.
Yes.
The CDKs, long focal length, big, reaching deep in there. The Delta Rhos are fast, wide field instruments. They work really well, but they're just different animals for different applications.
But, that does bring up I'd like to show a fun picture. Let's see how well it does on, there we go. Let me share. Okay. Are you seeing that?
Yeah, I've seen this shot on a big screen at the shows, and it's crazy at high res.
Yeah, okay, so here's a close-up, and then you can start to, but what's fun is you can see this galaxy here. Hell, there's probably a galaxy right back there in that star. But you start zooming out. I mean, and look at this region here, man. There's a lot going on.
Cool chain right there. This is like the beginning of Contact, where you just keep zooming
out.
Look
at this. Look at this field of view. So this is a Delta Rho 20 or Delta Rho 500. I mean, it's just unbelievable. All the stars. But yeah, this field right here is just incredible, the stuff going on in there. So just a really great image showing, so the F3 telescopes have their great things that they're good at doing. The F7, F6.F7, they have the things that they're great at doing. Really, guys, you need to have both. So
that's why some of the L mounts can actually mount multiple scopes on them. So
that's right.
There's a first world problem. So you need a 14
right.
CDK and a 14 delta row. It's just, there you
right.
go.
I can do it all, right?
Why have one when you can have two at twice the price?
Exactly.
Will PlaneWave think about making other types of telescopes such as refractors or still specialized reflector types? Have you thought about doing it conceptually?
We thought about refractors over the years. Yeah, we thought about it. It's hard because there's so many good refractor manufacturers, and it's a tight market. There's a lot going on there. So for us to make one, it's not like we're going to make it necessarily better than anyone else, right? We would add another good refractor. Maybe there would be some special thing we'd think of, clever, to differentiate. But there's so many good refractor companies out there. I don't see the opening. Even if we made a good one, they're why change to us? Just to have the PlaneWave. Some people would do that. It's fun. I would love to have some good binoculars just for something inexpensive to give away at shows. That's PlaneWave. That's a high quality binocular. We've talked about importing something. That's good.
But you guys really have kind of found your niche with the CDK designs and the variations from that world. So it's like once you kind of find the market and what your customers demand from it, it's like, well, we stay within the confines, still push it, but within our framework. So
right. Well, and we do have other design. So one project we're working on.
Oh, I think Rick's internet froze. We made it pretty far. Let's see if it'll catch up here real quick.
We did make am I frozen?
Yeah.
Just give me a second.
There we go. I should have screenshotted.
Is it coming back?
You were like this. I should have screenshotted it for your book. Now you're good.
Okay, so we are working to build a big survey telescope. Probably not going to say more yet until everything's signed, but we've made some small delta row telescopes. We made some 8-inch versions of it, which we've given to quite a few not to this customer, so they could test out. And then we've made a bigger one, a 280 millimeter. I think one of these products at some point will come out for consumers.
Yeah.
So something, a portable telescope.
The next question kind of bounces into that. Can we get a 6-inch CDK that can rival the RC on price?
It's hard. It's difficult to make in the U.S. and rival Chinese prices. But, we are looking at really hard at ways of making our manufacturing of many mirrors at a time, much less expensive with our computerized optics machines. So we're looking at ways of trying to really lower that entry level price to compete. And truthfully, for me, like I hate buying things that are cheap. I just won't anymore. Even if it's like this one's cheaper than that one, but it's like a printer. Man, printers, they've just gotten so cheap. Like I want to spend more, but they're all made so cheap, that they now take 20 minutes to kind of align themselves, and the drivers, are working, then stop working. I want things that work. We're trying to make things that work and try to make them at an affordable price. So
yeah, you do get what you pay for, and you do see some of that nowadays where it's like, oh, look at this thing. It's so cost effective and I can afford it. Or it's just easier for more people to get it. But particularly in the world of refractors, you have some manufacturers that have stepped in and it's like, oh, wow, I can get a 7-inch for $5,000. It's like, yeah, there's something there on why it costs this and why this one costs this. So.
Right. Well, I will say, because we have talked a little bit about mass manufacturing versus um, lower quantity manufacturing. So while I would say compared to Celestron, we are not manufacturing in those numbers at all, not even close. But for big mirrors, like I don't think there's anybody in the world that manufactures as many as we do. I think we make more big mirrors than any other manufacturer in the world by far, like probably by an order of magnitude at least.
Yeah, like how long would it, like if I called you right now, how long would it take for me to get a 1 meter from you guys?
I mean, it might take 3 months just because we have a line of them.
Yeah.
It
But I
used
mean,
to
if
be,
you were to call
yeah.
up, and I could think of a handful of opticians, amazing ones like Mike Lockwood or something like that, where if you called up and you wanted a 1 meter made from them, it's going to take, and if they don't have
Oh
the
yeah,
glass on hand,
yeah.
you're taking 3 months just to get the blank, and then you're in the queue. So I would say, an average 1 meter a year at best. So
Yeah. So I'll tell you. So we just let me show you. Let me pull up another picture. Let me see. Where is it? Oh, it's over here. So we have a new product that's coming out, a new 1 meter that's coming out. So we have a 1 meter CDK, we have a 1 meter RC, and now we have a 1 meter prime focus. Pictures on here. Well, I'll show what I got. Yeah, here we go. Okay, and share.
holy
Okay,
crap,
see that?
that's awesome.
So yeah, so this is a prime focus 1 meter. We're actually delivering it. It'll be finished, today. Is actually we're invoicing it today. The mirror is done, has a hexapod, so it's a prime focus, but it's folding. In order to shorten the tube, we put a flat mirror in that goes here, but it's controlled by a hexapod there. You see. Um, Here's kind of see if any other pictures I have. Oh, it has a direct drive derotator built into the back plate. So, because we're trying to minimize using up back focus, so that's built into the back plate. So I install the mirror. Anyways, so this is the primary baffle.
This
I mean, it's
doesn't
just
use the tertiary design like the other 1 meters. This is just straight
this is a
Cassegrain.
cash grain focus. So now you have it's an f2.25, right? Has a big wide field. We're putting a $300,000 camera on it, but we're also going to test it with a ZWO, one that we have. But the customer has this giant, very sensitive Teledyne camera. But anyways, that mirror, which was a brand new mirror we made, we had to make a whole new test tower for it. We had to do all testing metrology, have you updated new machine size blank and everything. I think it took us 2 months to make the mirror, to figure the mirror. We're working 24 hours a day to do it. But I mean, there's nobody in the world doing stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's at the same time, we were making an RC 1 meter mirror. We were making multiple 24-inch mirrors and multiple 700 mirrors all at the same time.
Well, so you guys do something really interesting with your 1 meters too, because it's not just, it's just a regular mirror. Yours are cellular, but you guys CNC them to be cellular. They're not casted blanks.
That's right. I can show a picture of that too. Let me see. It's right here. So here's a 1 meter mirror blank, and these are lightweighting pockets. So the advantage to this, and we also do it for our RC 700 as a lightweighted like this, and our RC 1 meter and the prime focus 1 meter we just did. So this is a lightweighted mirror. It weighs 120 pounds for a 1 meter mirror. Most people have to have a thicker mirror because it's not lightweighted, and they weigh about 600 pounds. So the whole telescope, because of that, when you have a 600-pound mirror, weighs and performs totally differently and cools totally differently. This one, we can cool that 20 degrees from 20 degrees C down to 1 degree C in an hour. So you can do a 20 degrees C equilibration cooling with all the fans blowing on it, within an hour.
Really, because my 28-inch Dob, it's a cellular mirror, and you get the rigidity because it's still 3-4 inches thick. You get the rigidity of something that thick, but the faceplate, at least for mine, my faceplate's a 1/2 inch thick. I'm not sure what your CDK 1000.
It's about that too.
Yeah, so you're getting the cooling capabilities of a mirror that's 1/2 inch thick, but you're getting the rigidity of a mirror that's however thick. So it's like best of both worlds. But you guys literally CNC this thing, and it's insane. Right. I don't know how many mirrors you broke perfecting that process, but
you know what? We didn't break one.
That's even more impressive.
No, we broke a small. So every mirror. So we make our mirrors out of fused silica. Okay, and our smaller mirrors are conical shaped. The backs are cone shaped. There's a hole in the center, right? And we machine every mirror is machined in our machine shop because you can't mold those. Mm-hmm. So even the 12 and ever since we've moved to fused silica, every mirror is machined. Some are lightweighted too, like this, more so. So
it's really quite a work of art if you ever see one of those uncoated just sitting there. I know you've brought them to shows in a big display case sometimes, but it's really cool to have one of those. Just see how intricate.
Now that mirror that in the display case was broken. That case was being moved on a forklift and it fell off. Yeah. Now that mirror wasn't ever finished. It was just a machine thing to demo, but it still hurts to talk about that.
We have like 3 minutes left. So
okay, well let me say one other thing real quick. Let me find it. So I think because of this, what we wanted to do was do sort of a promo code for this podcast. You know, so here we're saying that we would give a 10% discount on an optical tube 20-inch or less if you use the Skywatcher Podcast 10 promo code, and you go to our website. If you request a quote before the 6th and you place the order before the 13th, you can get 10% off on an optical tube.
That's pretty awesome. So, I was not aware of this for anybody watching. So this is all Rick and his team. So, but that's cool.
Yeah. Maybe you can put that up as a, let people know that too, because I love talking telescopes. I'm not always the best salesman. The good part of my salesman is I love what I'm talking about. The bad part is, making sure I get something like this out. So my sales team will call me later.
It's relevant. I know we only have 2 minutes left, but for saying that you love scopes and stuff like that, there's one more question that I think would be cool, just to wrap it all. What is your favorite personal scope? Like, you get to play with all these crazy things. What's your favorite one?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I think right now it changes. It changes as we're designing scopes. It tends to be the last one we designed. Mm-hmm. So like the prime focus there's so much incredible, cool engineering in it. But I will state kind of my favorite scope right now is the Delta Row 20. I think it's just this sweet spot. F3 20-inch telescope. There's just not a lot of, you don't see images like that very often. And that's just a sweet spot. And I want to play with that a lot more.
I've seen them at shows. They look a lot of fun. I'd love to see what one of those does in a dark sky. Just like put an hour on like the horse head and just done. So
it's we have a lot more cool things coming out in the future, and we're focused a lot on, I don't want people to think Observable Space. We wanted to change the name because we wanted to show people that we're more than just what each company was before. Yeah. At the same time, I want everyone in this audience to know that, we are totally dedicated to this market. Mm-hmm. While we're doing real cool things for NASA, for Space Force, we're trying to put stuff in space. There's a lot of stuff we're working on. But this market is a key important market to us, and we're not going to deviate from that. We're going to push harder into this market. And, I want to see you guys at shows. And, I know that RC Optical back in the day kind of shifted away from the amateur market and went, and that's not what we're doing. That's not what we're doing at all. So.
Well, I appreciate it. I love that PlaneWave and Observable Space are still invested in this world. I know you got your start in here, so you want to keep your roots true.
Very loyal to this
Yeah,
market, and we want to grow it. We want to put a lot into this market. All the things we're working on, all this high tech stuff that is, going into the commercial market is coming to to our amateur market also.
that's awesome.
So,
well, there you go, guys. That's Rick Hedrick. Rick, thanks for hanging out. Look forward to seeing all the crazy stuff you guys come up with. That Prime Focus one looks freaking awesome. You have to send me some pictures when you get something out of that one. But
for sure, yeah, it's being assembled right. The final optics are being put in it right now. So that's where awesome. I'm going out to see after this. So.
Cool. All right, guys, if you want to know more, you can head over to Observable Space website. We have it in the chat already. If you want to know more about their stuff, head over there. Their team's great. We'll see you guys next week for another What's Up in the Night Sky for June. If you happen to be at Grand Canyon this weekend, I'll be there, so come by and say hi. And yeah, so thanks a lot, Rick. We'll see you sometime soon. And everyone else.
Yeah, thanks, man.
We'll see you guys next week. So clear skies, everyone.
Clear skies. Bye-bye.